Hello and welcome to PGurus channel. I'm your host Sri Iyer. Today we're back with Abhijit Iyer Mitra to catch up on what has been going on in the line of actual control. And we are going to set the context by first showing you a map of the Pangong South section. As you can see on the screen now, this is the Pangong South section. And Abhijit will be explaining what has been happening there. Where is the Indian army now? Is it in a position of strength? Maybe not, or maybe it is not. Whatever it is, here is the expert who is going to weigh in on this. And please remember that this is the map that he is talking about. Abhijit, go ahead.
Har Har Mahadev to all our viewers. So I'm just going to explain what has happened. Now, there are some pieces before I come to the map. I wanted to point you to two pieces of information that had come out. One was a brave soldier named Tenzin died in the last few days, and that was in an operation directed somewhere around South Pangong. And there was a second piece of information. We've all heard Tenzin's name, but there was a separate piece of information that another soldier had died with apparently a bullet to the neck. And of course, there was a third piece of information that yet another soldier had died from an IED explosion. That was all that was said. Now, between the bullet to the neck and the IED explosion, we know that Tenzin was one of these. We don't know who the other person is. Now, it could also be the same person, and it could be confusion in terms of reporting. But with that in mind, I'm going to take you now to the conflict area that has been discussed over this last few days. Now, if you look at the map here, the LAC, the relevant part of the LAC has been marked in orange. The Indian claim is further east of this. So if you look at this lake, the lake to the north, the blue thing to the north is Pangong.
Yes.
The little blue lake to the south is Spangur Lake. Now, what happens here is the Indian claim line is just about east. Right now, you can see the LAC is west. The orange line is west of Spangur Lake.
Yes.
The Indian claim line is somewhere east of Spangur Lake. Now, what has happened here is that you can see we have marked the Indian positions in blue and the Chinese positions in red.
Got it.
And
so the Chinese, just give me 1 second. The Chinese are near what is called as Black Top, and India is near Helmet Top and Gurung Hill. Please continue.
Correct. Now, what is happening out here is you will notice that the LAC in this case does not run, and this is contrary to most conventions, mapping conventions. It actually runs on the slope, on the Indian side of the slope of the hill, on the western slope of the hill, rather than on the eastern slopes of the hill, because that is where China came up to during the 62 war. However, please also note the three blue dots that I've marked.
Yes.
Between Helmet Top and Black Top,
yes.
Then at Gurung Hill, and
yes.
then at
Rechinla.
Don't keep saying yes, Shri, because it's interrupting my flow. The three blue dots that I've marked, they are the major elevations out there that give you unrestricted view down into Spangur Lake. Now you can look at the number of red dots at Spangur Lake and at that minor little valley marked Black Top. If you see the arrow saying Black Top and then leading up to a red dot, that is a little valley connecting Spangur Lake to Pangong Lake. Now, if you notice something here, we haven't crossed the LAC at all. Not 1 inch. We're sitting on the LAC, but what we're doing is we are facing downhill into Spangur Lake. And if you can look at this entire Spangur Valley, south is an easy valley, and to the north, that valley comes and connects up to a valley on our side, which is again an open valley, so easy for tank warfare and things like that. what we have basically done taking the heights out there is we have destroyed any element of surprise that the Chinese had. That is what we have achieved, and this is why China is now completely pissed off, because any hopes and ambitions that they had for any land grabbing out here have gone out of the window. We have not, and I want to emphasize this, we have not grabbed Chinese side of the LAC. We are still on the Indian side of the LAC. We have just occupied the heights, which we had not occupied before.
So what is the need then for the defense minister to talk with his counterpart?
Because now we are talking, look, first there are two aspects to it. One is the intelligence gathering aspect. Remember, especially during wars, especially during tension, you need to sit down and talk to the enemy. Why? Not because of any, and you know me, I hate all this Mombatti holding peacenik nonsense, right? Hindi Chini bhai bhai, Hindi Pakistani bhai bhai, complete bullshit. I never subscribe to this kind of nonsense. There is a clear intelligence value to talking to the Chinese minister, because there are reports that happen. What happens is you see what the interaction is between the defense minister and his staff. You see how many times he's corrected. You measure what he's saying, the language he's used. You compare it to previous demarches and things like that, so on and so forth. And then you contrast what he said with what the Chinese press is saying. And in this case, it was a very important message that we understood from it, because within I think about 3 or 4 hours of Rajnath meeting the Chinese defense minister, Global Times came out with a particularly, even by their own incendiary standards, they came out with a particularly incendiary dismissal of India, which shows you that there's no willingness on their part to back down. And from everything I'm hearing in Beijing, they are getting ready for some kind of major push into India. It is not going to happen now, but it is going to happen 6 to 8 months down the line, when they feel absolutely comfortable of teaching us a lesson. From this point on, you just can't let your guard down. Number one. The second reason you talk to your enemy during a phase like this is to keep establishing contact, to understand who you will talk to when the proverbial what etc hits the fan, and you figure out the lines of communication. That was also essential, and it was essential to try to de-escalate the situation. So there was nothing wrong in Rajnath Singh meeting this man per se.
So that's an excellent perspective that you're sharing, Abhijit, and people who are body language experts can definitely see and read a lot. Although I must say that the Chinese as a culture or the race are pretty stoic. They rarely display any emotions, although the Japanese might give them a run for their money. That's just my 2 cents. I could be wrong about this. But how do you see? So I think we've gained a better position. We may not have gained any ground, but you've gained better position. We are, you may be able to ward off some things that, like you said. So now this is a 4,000 kilometer line. Now I know that India has also mobilized resources, I should say, near the Galwan Valley, and the Daulat Old Beg airport access now, I believe, is functional. Is it now operational and functional? Can supplies go back and forth from Ladakh?
Absolutely. There is no, in fact, the road building pace on the Indian side is incredible. We have achieved in 1 year. Remember, the Chinese, whatever they're doing right now is to thwart our ability to build roads and infrastructure on our side. In 1.5 years, we have done what we hadn't managed to do in the last 60, 70 years, which was to build serious infrastructure, because, the Border Roads organization is thoroughly corrupt. It's a thoroughly compromised organization. It's all for making money pretty much. So this was a very necessary step. Understand, as tragic as the loss of 20 soldiers at Galwan was, what it won us was the right to build infrastructure on our side. Now, you might say, how is it worthwhile losing lives to build infrastructure on our side, on our territory. Well, the problem is when you say status quo was that Chinese would build infrastructure and India simply would not build infrastructure. That had become the status quo. So we had to change the status quo, and that is what we did. Okay. And in that, if you look at it, 20 lives is, it's not a bad price. I mean, it's a horrible thing to say, unfortunately, but, these things, unfortunately, are measured in deaths. We bought ourselves the right to build infrastructure, unrestricted building of infrastructure. We can do whatever we want. The Chinese can't do anything to us right now if we build roads. And, I can tell you, several of my own friends have gotten contracts. They work for foreign mining companies and alpine tunneling companies and things like that. They have gotten contracts for the first time. Private industry is getting contracts to rapidly build tunnels and roads in all these areas. So that is very, very important. Number two, if you can please put the map up again, I want to show you something.
Yes, here you go. I need to say something. The reason I kept interrupting you was because if I say something, the map gets shown there. So I'm just going to let it there for a minute for people to look at it. Over to you.
Okay. So the thing here is I want you to connect this now to the two reports, either bullet in the neck or IED explosion that killed either one person or two people.
Right.
Now, remember, like what the Pakistanis did at Kargil, we have essentially done what the Pakistanis did at Kargil, which is we have gone and occupied the heights. Now, everybody knows what kind of horrors those Pakistani troops sitting on the heights went through, because it was freezing to death. There was no support that could come up from the back. And those were basically unsustainable positions that we could keep pounding and wear them out. Difficult, but ultimately unsustainable positions. Now, what we have done here is quite different. We have gone up there, and what we can see from some high resolution satellite imagery, we guess, because we've seen certain activity, certain infantry activity happening, which we can guess what they're doing. We may be absolutely wrong. Is that on these three positions, Rechinla, that point between Blacktop and Helmet Top, and Gurung Hill, what we have done is we have mined the entire area, as in landmines, anti-personnel landmines, which means in winter we can actually come down. We don't have to occupy the heights. We can surveil their side through drones. But if they try to come up, they are going to pay an extremely heavy price in lives lost. Now, remember this, you can't just come up to these tops. You require a huge amount of, you need donkeys, horses, whatever you have, mountaineers, and so on and so forth. Laying mines is very easy. You can mine the entire area in about 15, 20 hours, but demining the area will literally take you months, if not years. So it's completely slowed down or eliminated any possibility now of the Chinese being able to come up and take this. And we suspect that Tenzin and the other person, or if it was just soldier Tenzin who died, possibly died in one of these landmines going off, because that was the only connection we could make. Shrapnel or the IED explosion we suspect was a mine blast. Number two, I also want to stress, as heartening as it is to suggest that the Chinese can't come up and take these positions, there is also one fundamental flaw out here, which is that this is a very sort of ground-centric, army-centric way of war fighting. If you're an army general, you think you've done something brilliant. If you're an Air Force person, you think that इन लोगों ने क्या करके रखा है? I can take out these three positions in an instant with precision-guided munitions. Remember, even in Kargil, the tide started turning when the Air Force, the Mirage 2000s, went in and started using precision-guided munitions against these bunkers. So that is a very important factor you have to take into account. But I want you to look at the string of dots out there on Spangur Lake. Yes. That was essentially a tank invasion highway. Right, because it's a complete valley that joins up to a large valley, and they could have just come into our side of the valley and cut that entire area off. and take control of most of the south bank of Pangong as well. For now, if they stick to an infantry, to a ground-based military strategy, the advantage is with us. Even with an air-based strategy, we don't entirely lose the advantage. It will really depend on what we can get up to those positions. But the good thing is the Chinese can't take those positions. It will come down to air combat versus air combat kind of thing. And that's a separate discussion to have. We now need to contrast with the north shore of the lake. Okay, because what has happened in the north shore of the lake is the Chinese also have not violated the LAC. They are sitting exactly on top, just the same way that we are sitting atop the LAC on the south bank. They are sitting atop all the heights on the north bank. The difference is, unlike the south, which is an invasion highway, the north, that Finger 4, especially Foxhole Point, it's almost an impregnable barrier in that sense that there's no roads that have crossed it or anything like that. So you can't really send in massed troops to capture the other side.
So all in all, a good development, I guess. At least it stops China from adventuring in one piece of geography in this line. And I guess there are other places such as Arunachal, which is what everybody has been thinking that the next skirmish perhaps might be either Doklam or Arunachal, who knows. But the fact remains that India needs to be on its guard, and so does China is still lashing out. I don't know what is going to happen, because right now there is a bit of a détente between US and China, perhaps because the US is so busy with its elections. And when the new government comes in November, then things again might start moving. At the same time, I must say that it is in these times of churn that a lot of developments happen. And I hope that this is it for now, because it's also getting very cold there. And if you'd like to say something in summary, please go ahead, and then we'll bring this conversation to a close.
Absolutely. So I'm not first expect something big to happen. The Chinese are up to something. We know this for a fact. There's a lot of pieces that indicate that. So beware. Keep your guard up. Number two, I'm not seeing this America-China detente. In fact, I see Trump getting harder and harder on China. And I suspect Trump is going to win the election. I think it's going to be the first presidential victory in spite of a recession economy. It would be unprecedented. And it mostly has to do with the fact that Biden is probably like their version of Rahul Gandhi in that sense. No matter what mistakes the prime minister makes, the fact is the other fellow is such an idiot, there's no chance they have of winning. The thing about Biden is, when he was asked this question on TV a few days back, his response, he refused to get tougher on China. His response was, we need to build more relationships with allies. Now, that isn't it hasn't worked in the past. It isn't going to work in the past. And that is the main reason that people like George Soros and co, who want to promote democracy everywhere. Notice all these wokes. Not one woke person, not one woke industrialist who support these woke rebellions will ever talk about China in any meaningful way, right? And there's a reason for it, because they're all in bed with the Chinese, or with Chinese interests, or with Chinese money. So if Biden comes, I think you can also expect a loss of support. This is where the Quad needs to get in. And unfortunately, India hasn't utilized the Quad. You see, we use it as a sort of temporary tool, as a PR tool rather than as a military tool. And we're doing nothing about it. Nothing's changed. It's still that same idiotic non-alignment policy happening. So, I see a lot of very dangerous historical patterns repeating. There is room for some optimism, but there is also great danger out here. I would just say, there are no quick fix solutions. It's all long-term solutions, and I don't see our government having either the gumption or the testicular fortitude to take those decisions.
I like that last line that you mentioned. And with those interesting words, very, very politically correct, I guess. Thank you very much, Abhijit. And as always, it's a pleasure having you on our channel. And viewers, please subscribe and donate to PGurus. Thank you very much. Namaskar.
Har Har Mahadev.